www.hoodmystic.com. Leave your ego at the door. www.hoodmystic.com. Leave your ego at the door. www.hoodmystic.com. Leave your ego at the door.
Peace and calm, prosperity to the family. It's the Hood Mystic representing www.hoodmystic.com. Continuing my Planets Explained series. Started with Pluto. Did Pluto explain? Neptune explained. Saturn explained. Jupiter explained. Now we're continuing the tradition with Venus explained. Sorry for the wait, but information has to come as it's sent. You can't really force information to be downloaded, and once the downloads come, you just have to know what to do with them. So I want to begin this video off with a Bible verse from 2 Peter verse 19 through 21. We also have the prophetic message as something completely reliable, and you will do well to pay attention to it, as to a light shining in a dark place until the day dawns and the morning star rises in your hearts. Above all, you must understand that no prophecy of Scripture came about by prophets' own interpretation of things. For prophecy never had its origin in the human will, but prophets, though human, spoke from God as they were carried along by the Holy Spirit. Now, throughout this video and throughout the Venus Explained article, which has just been released at www.hoodmystic.com, there will be quotes of Bible verses. And the reason that I'm doing that is based upon the fact that we have to look at what's placed before us and decode it. I don't know about you, but I grew up in America and I was raised mainly Christian. Before I had a choice, I just, grew up in the church. But what I always noticed about the church, whether I liked it or didn't like it, it held a power some form of majesticism that I couldn't quite put my finger on. I couldn't quite understand. So I just want to say peace to the family. Thank you for joining me this afternoon. And I want to kind of deal with these mysteries. And I want to kind of go along with my article and then kind of elaborate on different points that I made in the article and really explain Venus. Because if we were to study, get this mic a little closer. If we were to study Western astrology, we would hear how Venus is the planet of love, Venus is the planet of beauty, and Venus is the planet of charm, and all of these things, which is cool. I feel like love, beauty, charm is a part of life, but if you were to really aspect them, like, what is it though? What is actual love? What is actual beauty? And also to indulge and to engage in that form or that lifestyle where beauty and love is your primary focus. What are the dark sides to that? Are there dark sides to that? Or do you simply stay in this state of bliss, love, and happiness and butterflies in your stomach? Maybe you have that form of relationship with your partner, but I've never experienced that. I've always experienced the euphoric, this person is amazing. Then reality kind of sets in, and then I'm forced to deal with things outside of my fantasy. So to me, that is what Venus ultimately speaks to, but let's just deal with it in all forms as possible within this allotted time in this video. Hopefully this information makes sense and you can kind of look at life in a more holistic view as opposed to simply just wanting these fantasies. Even if you were to achieve or have your fantasy, how are you able to sustain it or maintain it? But let's digress a little bit and let's just talk about Venus. And so let's bring up another Bible verse before we get to talking about it. Let's go. Let's open the book. Let's open our Bibles. We don't got to go far. Genesis chapter 1, verse 3. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that light was good. Now, if you were to just read it and you would say, God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, you would imagine that God would be talking about sunlight, correct? But that's not the etymology or the concordance of that word. That word is translated to the Aramaic or Hebrew word or hour, which is a feminine noun and represents a particular light, not light from the sun. When you speak of light from the sun, that word is shamesh, and that's a masculine noun, like literal light from the sun. So you notice that it's a difference between lights. So the hour, the feminine light, is speaking to Venus's light. When God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, and light was good, we're talking about consciousness. We're talking about illumination. You know how all the conscious people, they always greet you with love and light, but they don't greet you with they don't say love and then flash a flashlight or point to the sun or nothing like that. What we're speaking of is internal illumination, wisdom, intuition, consciousness, path working, all of that. If you are the type of person that wakes up early in the morning, you get a chance to actually see Venus, and that's actually an experience. It's not, it's just weird, looking up in the sky and seeing this star so bright in the sky. You would have to really feel it to understand it, and most people don't really wake up around that time, so it might be foreign to you. But the reason why it's so foreign, the reason why it feels so auspicious is based upon Venus's actual composition. So Venus is literally like a gas greenhouse, and the sun shines light directly through Venus, and Venus is like 800 degrees, full of volcanoes, full of sulfuric acid, and it's so much energy that it reflects through convocation a third of its light to the earth. So that light that is reflected from the sun through Venus to the earth, that is the light that is being spoke about when stated, "Let there be light." Not cutting on the lights in the room is not the sun shining. It is a different kind of light. It's a different kind of light that's related to information that may not have anything to do with intelligence. Very occult. And so when we speak of love, a lot of people fantasize about love, but they never engage and never experience it, because to experience love, it might be tumultuous. You know, love is risky. To really invest your time and energy into a stranger, and people lie, people have their dark side, you have your dark side. It is very, very tricky. But in our minds, we still have this great fantasy of this deep, fantastical love that we'll one day experience without the dark shit. And that's kind of unattainable in a sense. So with this idea of mine, we can understand how Venus and the Earth are called twin sisters, mainly because they are the same size. But past that, they are representing two different types of polarities, where Venus is just the constant sacrifice for us to even live on this earth. So you have to think about it, right? The sun rises, it allows the grass to grow, our crops to grow. The moon is going through its thing. It's like, making sure the tides and the water is held back so we could, survive on this land. And this is how we are like moving and grooving about life. But then you have to think, like, what is giving us this spark of, let's build a road, or let's come together, or let me give my mama a hug? That would have to be the influence of Venus. And so this is our primary function in creation. Like, before we were created, Venus was created, and kind of mapping out and really programming us and understanding like who we are as human beings. And if that sounds a little crazy, give me a second. Let me get to a good slide. So this picture that I have in this corner, peace to everybody joining the live. Thank y'all for joining me. So this picture in the corner is actually the point in times where Venus is conjunct to the Earth. Now, a lot of the work that I've been doing and that I've been kind of writing with the articles is in preparation for my book. And one of my chapters in my book is going to be specific to Earth transits. Earth transits are important, but who really talks about it? If we're going to really understand the planet, if we're going to really understand ourselves, one of the vital planets and understandings of astrology is, where is Earth at? And also, where is Earth at related to Venus? Because it's kind of odd for the sun to be in different places, as if the Earth is the center and everything is rotating around the sun, and everything is rotating around the Earth. See, that kind of ideology and that kind of thinking is what they called is what came before heliocentric thought, where everything just existed around the earth. And everything existed around you. And then people like Copernicus and people like that start to realize that no, we're actually not the center of the universe. The sun is the center and we all rotate around the sun. So therefore, when we map our astrology, it's like we're mapping it kind of off. And so understanding astrology is still a science that needs to be investigated. It still needs to be sought out. And I say all of that to say, when you get on the internet and you start searching for shit, and then you start accepting information based upon, you don't necessarily know where they got that information. They drop keywords, but it's like, where'd you get that from? And that's what we're trying to do with these explained. It's like tying in mythology, tying in astronomy, so you could get a full glimpse of the planet. And with that full glimpse of the planet, you don't necessarily need keywords because you understand what that planet means. And Earth, nobody knows what Earth means, but I'm going to give you a little hint. It's really an anagram for the heart. So Earth and heart are synonymous. And when we're trying to chart our hearts and figure out where our hearts are, it'd be wise for us to figure out where Earth is in astrological terms. Where is it related to the sun? And so that would really serve us because our heart is important. And our heart conjunct with Venus and love is good times to sow those seeds for relationships. And let me just pause right quick because a thought came to me. I was thinking about this really all day. And in Venus, it gets you to thinking about relationships. And the thought occurred to me in studying Venus, and it's like, relationships are shit, man. Relationships are trash. And then I started to really channel myself and really ask myself, well, how are relationships trash when my grandmother and grandfather literally were like down to ride? They had their checkbooks was balanced. They owned a home, they owned property, they provided for the family, and the generation subsequent to that, they didn't carry on those traditions. And why? And Spirit said to me, like, it's a very big difference between marriage and love. Marriage is a contract based upon, living in the world and combining resources and legacy and taking care of your offspring. It's wise to marry somebody, but that has literally nothing to do with the feelings of Venus and the feelings of love. It's hidden. But then again, it's powerful because it'll make you feel like you need to step away from everything that you've created. With the person that you thought you loved 2 years ago, now you can't stand that person. You can't stand to look at that person, and you want to create a whole new situation with a whole nother person. And let's just not stop there. Let's create that. Let's leave the person, and let's start this new relationship, and let's create the same vibration over and over and over again. I love you. Now I can't stand you. What's wrong with these niggas? What's wrong with these women? Everybody is the problem. I don't have a problem. I'm perfect. Something is wrong with these people. I would say something is wrong with your perspective and your expectation for wanting something that can't be sustained. Or if it could be sustained, what's the modality? How, if what I liked when we first met was you in all of your glory, and then 6 months later you showing up in pajamas and a hair wrap, and you freaking a black and mild. It's like it's hard to love you the same way. So if you're not going into it knowing that this person is going to come through really not meeting your expectations one day, and maybe they do, but you ain't really seeking that. You seeking something more balanced and more understanding. And so let me get back to this build. Humanity and Venus and the Pentagram. We've all seen that portrait of Leonardo da Vinci's painting with the man stretched out, and you can see the design of the star. We've all seen magic rituals where they cast the pentagram in the sky. We've all seen the pentagram in some form or fashion in our lives. You see the pentagram in Christianity in the 5 wounds of Jesus and the symbolism of him being on the cross. And say, for instance, the original symbol was the pentagram, but that pentagram at first was a pentagram, but now it's a cross. Then you can understand the power of the pentagram and the usurpation of the pentagram into the cross. And then you look at Christianity, where it's this religion where they're honoring this deity called Jesus, who's not really God. He's the intermediary. He's the reflection of God. And he came to the earth and left the earth. And all of these things, it all just ties into Venus being a celestial being and being 2 sides of a coin. Venus really controls the dual nature of humanity and that dark side or that occult side. It is the upper and lower. It is the as above and so below. Venus is the Baphomet, the man and the woman, and pointing up and pointing down with the goat's head and all of that. It's the pentagram, but it might be the pentagram reversed. In the Bible, Venus is mentioned in relation to Lucifer and Jesus. In Revelations 22:16, it is stated that I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright and morning star. And when we look up the concordance to morning star, it is the word Orinthos. And Orinthos is relating to the dawn, or Matatuno, or Matatuda. And Matatuda is just an epithet of Venus. Matatuda is just a Roman goddess that represents the dawn. So literally, every day we're experiencing this religious experience, and we might be looking in a book and looking at pictures and looking at, expoundations on this original idea, which is just Venus. In Isaiah 14:12, it states, have you fallen from heaven, morning star, son of dawn? You have been cast down to earth. You once laid low the nations. So that's speaking to Lucifer, and then tying in Lucifer to the morning star. So if you ever wanted to know who Lucifer is, or thinking that Lucifer was the devil or Lucifer was some bad thing, well, that is kind of programming. If you were to read the Bible and look up the concordance, you would see that Lucifer is just simply Venus. The word Lucifer took in the concordance. So the concordance, I don't know if I explain. If I was to be a minister or a preacher, I wouldn't study the Bible. I would study the concordance, because the Bible is just something for the public masses. It's literally put in front of you to confuse you. If you ever wanted to understand what was being said in the Bible, you would have to understand some other system of divination, whether it be numerology, etymology, gematria, studying the concordance. I like to study the concordance. I like to study the Hebrew words, what they really meant, and take it like, society can put their own spin on it. It's kind of like, you ever played that game in school and y'all all sit in a circle and you start off with a story like, anything, and by the time it get around to you again, it's something completely different. That's what the Bible is. And so the words, that's literally what the Bible is. So to kind of deal with the etymology or the root of it, you kind of get more of an understanding. So when it comes to Lucifer, what is that word that the Hebrews use? That word is halal, and halal is simply translated to the shining one, i.e. Venus. Lucifer, the light bringer, the morning star, Venus. Like, Lucifer is Venus, period. Like, there is nothing outside of that. And if you get outside of that, you done got you number 6 in the whisper line. You ain't dealing with the actual factual. So where Lucifer, Venus, Aphrodite, Ishtar, all of that, Sekhmet, is not talking about actual people. It's actually talking about celestial beings and their cosmology and their mythology. And if we could understand that, then we could understand Venus. So with that being said, if we were to understand Venus as this beautiful planet of beauty and charm, but then it's it's the Lucifer aspect to it too. And it's just that's just too deep. I don't want to get into it. Well, you on the wrong channel, sis. So this was the 5 wounds of Jesus that's spoken to in the Bible, where you have the stigmata, where he got pinned on his feet supposedly, and then the crown of thorns. But then down here you have the Baphomet sigil, which is the same shape but just flipped upside down. So just think about it for a second. This canister. If I had this canister, you see this canister, if I flip it upside down, is it or is it not the same canister? Does it have a different meaning? Is it something completely different? No, it's the same thing. It's just flipped upside down, and then you might look at it differently. It might not hold the same weight. It might have different properties now that it's upside down, but it's the same thing. What we tend to do is look at the same shit as upright and say, that's what I need. I'm all for that. I need to have it upright. But then when it flips upside down, it's like you don't even want it no more. Very, very interesting when you really sit and think about it. So we talked about the Baphomet representing Venus. We talked about Jesus representing Venus. We talked about Lucifer representing Venus, and just to surmise, I guess, to just put it in summary, it's very wise for us to look at energies not as one thing, or one good thing or one bad thing. And understanding Venus, you wouldn't necessarily just be a worshiper of Jesus, right? You wouldn't be a Christian, right? Nor would you be a full-on Satanist drinking blood. You wouldn't be either of those. So in the grand scheme of things, the powers that be have polarized this energy, and there is no particular center. I find that there is beauty in the Baphomet, and believe it or not, it's beauty in the Jesus mythology, especially when you get into the Gnostic scriptures and the mystery schools and things of that nature. I've said on many a times on this channel, if I didn't have a dream where Jesus came to me and spoke to me, and literally his energy or whatever you call it, then I wouldn't even say that, because I understand that's not very popular to say that, an energy that I feel is Jesus came and spoke to me. But then again, uncovering the mystery. It could have just been an aspect of Venus. And the more that I look at it, the more that I understand it, if religion is hiding something, then to me, this is what it's hiding: the mystery of a balanced and holistic approach to understanding your cosmology or your history. And it's like one way or another. And that's not necessarily true if I was to like be real about my experience on this earth. There's been times where I've had money. There's been times where I've had abundance of love. There's been times where I've had energy. There's been times where that shit has failed, and I've been down and I've been out and I've been broke and I've been lonely. But then I've rose up. Like, this is not something that just happened once or twice. I've had ups and downs probably 50 times in my life, and I'm 34 years old. I'll have ups and downs in one day. I'll win big and lose big and win big again, all in the same day. So why would I be attached to one polarity, up or down? I would have to figure out a way of narrating or figuring out a particular understanding of my life that is somewhat balanced. And I couldn't be basing my life on this supreme goodness of, being the first black mayor of my city. The list can go on and on and on about how many fantasies that a person could have, or how many fears could I have? Could she break up with me? Could she get me robbed? Can this person be trusted? And I guess, well, I shouldn't say I guess. I know that wanting in itself as a noun, like I just want, is not Venusian or understanding Venus. To desire is literally a verb of literally desiring as an action. Outside of desiring as a noun. And I find that this is interesting how it all ties into the new moon. But I want to talk about Sekhmet as well. Because I remember when I was first getting into consciousness and you read about all of the things and all of the different mythologies. And one of those mythologies that I could not understand for the life of me, like even when I heard it, it just sounded weird. Like what does this mean? And Sekhmet would, like, she was sent from Ra into Earth and just started eating everybody and just would not stop eating people. Like eating people, right? Wouldn't stop eating people until Ra had to, put some trickery down to make her not eat people, and then, calm her down in such a way, get her drunk in such a way just to calm her down. And then from there, she became Hathor, and then became venerated, and then became one of the most popular goddesses, the goddess for protection. And I'm just like, that just don't make sense to me. Like, what is being said here in this mythology? And for years, I just never understood it. But the image, it just stayed fixated in my mind. Whenever I think of Sekhmet, I just think about her just devouring humanity. And I'm like, what is being said? Well, in studying Venus, I figured it out. There was a man by the name of Immanuel Velikovsky who was a contemporary of Albert Einstein and the like. The thing about mainstream science, archaeology, psychology, science, like all forms of different sciences, there's a status quo. There's like, you can't say anything outside of the status quo or you'll be discredited and you'll be kicked out of the club, so to speak. So when we think about information, and you might hear about somebody or hear some information and present it, and people will be like, well, you can't really listen to him because he's a fraud. the first thing you got to do is be like, who said he was a fraud? Because if mainstream society said he was a fraud and he was putting in like the scientific method and he was saying something different and he was probably saying something that you could benefit from, then it 9 times out of 10 it was discredited. So I gotta harken back to when we searching on the internet for information that's validated and it feels good and everybody is championing it. Like, oh, you know, Venus is the goddess of beauty and love. Okay. You ever been in love though? Like really in love? That shit is devastating. Especially, it's devastating. But when you really in love, devastation don't even stop the shit. You could be in a whole goddamn earthquake and volcano with a person and just be like, bae, is you okay? You all right? And it wouldn't necessarily even matter, man. But the point that I'm speaking to of Immanuel Velikovsky is he was the one who stated that Venus was a comet. And in trying to understand Sekhmet, you have to understand Venus as a comet and the destruction that she caused on the planet during those times. So if Venus is causing all of this mass destruction and Sekhmet is literally eating people and people at first feared her, then that makes more sense to the mythology, and then we can understand the mythology a little better. Then we can kind of understand the turmoil that love has caused us. Like, man, just think about all of the bullshit. Like you 18 in your 20s in the name of love, you know, getting your goddamn freak on. Like all of this, all of destruction and trauma and bullshit that happened in your life based upon you deciding to love somebody. And then to make it through all of that and then to still be in a space where I'm not even bitter. I'm not even mad. Matter of fact, I'm gonna put you on a pedestal for the drama that you even gave me. See, that's real love. It could feel like a murderous rampage. It could feel like ferocious and that depression that's associated with having your heart broke. But then the power that comes from the alchemy and the transmutation, because I think what was found after Sekhmet would do the destruction piece was that there was this new world and this new information that they were allowed to create this world. And I feel this is where you get the pyramids from, and all of the Egyptian mythology is this interaction between Venus and the earth. Because I think about it in a sense of a dying planet, and that dying planet having to haul all of their resources and all of their knowledge into the younger planet, because Venus knows for a fact that it's gonna be a volcano, a poisonous mess, and it literally can't foster life. It literally can only give energy. So Venus in that aspect is like your higher self, where your higher self can't live in a body, can't really be on the earth. All it can simply do is transmute energy. And then you start dealing with your higher self. Maybe you don't deal with your higher self and you had a tumultuous life and you had a tumultuous upbringing. And then you're like, you know, you might feel as though nobody got your back or nobody loves you. But say, for instance, we had a different perspective that tumultuousness or that pain or that destruction was absolutely necessary for holistic experience on this planet. Like, what if we didn't absolutely think that everything was supposed to be this fantastical fantasy of all black people on a farm, you know, singing and dancing, drumming, making love, everything perfect. What if we had to work towards that? And to understand the positive, we would also have to understand the negative. Just a question. Let me see. Did I miss any slides? I don't think so. Let me touch on this desire piece one more time. Because within the very word of Venus, and you think of the morning star when you walk out in the morning sight, you have to observe it. You have to see Venus in the sky. And so to desire is taken from the word awaiting what the stars bring, which is taken from the word consider, which is taken to observe the stars, which is taken from the word sidereal, is because we are stars. And we can see ourselves as stars when we spread our arms out and spread our legs out. We can see the pentagram. We can see that. We can see the correlation. So much so when people talk about like the figure of a star, like if you think about a star and the symbol, the pentagram is ultimately in one shape or another is the immediate sign that you see. And if that pattern was taken from how we were designed, then it shows us that there's more mystery to be discovered in our history. Like studying astrology, it makes me not think of myself as anything outside of being a star being. Don't make me think of myself as a man or a woman or black or white or tall or short or fat or skinny or beautiful or ugly or nothing to that. It absolves me of all of that. I want to get more in tune with my truth and the star within me. And I understand that this conversation towards Venus is very different from mainstream and normal regular astrology. But I would question or challenge you into saying, is that actually giving you answers and solving the questions in your life? Or is it just confirming what you want to happen in the forms of a fantasy? So just like where we may think that the earth is we're just here on the earth, Venus is the planet's alter ego. And so just like we might think that we're here on this earth by ourselves, our alter ego is the representation of Venus. It is the understanding and the corresponding to both of those energies. And in that space, we're grounded in real reality. In that space, we are deeply connected to our higher self. And in that space, we are illuminated and we are guided. So many times, we are thought to have to think it all in our minds. We have to be the one to figure it all out. And we don't never give it up to illumination and intuition. And looking at both sides of the coin, and Venus really helps us do that in many different forms and fashions. And I don't necessarily know, like I said, I wasn't ever going to be able to speak on every total mystery that Venus encompasses. But what I could do is simply hopefully help you, assist you in understanding some apparent mysteries. And what you'll see is that you'll see this Venus mystery everywhere. It's like last night I was taking my notes, and then I got finished taking my notes, and before I went to bed I started watching Ozarks, and I was finishing up season 2, and so I watched episode 9 and episode 10 from season 2 of Ozarks. In the beginning of the episode, there was Jacob Snell and his wife Darlene Snell, and this was like in the 1950s or the 1970s. Jacob had just got home from the war, and he was sitting there talking to this church girl, and she was just talking to him how she was gonna be the perfect girl. And then Darlene came and blew down on him and was like, you know, you could choose to be with this boring girl for the rest of your life and die of boredom, or you can come be with me, and I'm not gonna say that it's gonna be perfect, but it's gonna be exciting. And so if you watch the show, you know how Darlene is just like off the fucking hook. Like, you don't never know what she's about to do. Like, she just be just bodying shit. Like, just like somebody called her a redneck. She just straight up murked the plug. You know what I'm saying? Like, just like she just off the hook. And even to the point where she's off the hook, like she ends up killing Jacob at the end of episode 9. Sorry to spoil it, but it's like she is the person that ends up killing him, like poisoning him and then kind of taking over the business. And it's like, that's Venus though for your ass, where you don't want to be bored, but then you don't want to be dealing with no hood rat that'll get you set up one day. You got to find that balance. And you may not be able to find that balance in your own mind, thinking on shit, journaling, watching YouTube videos, and doing all of the host of shit that conscious niggas have promoted for you to do. At a certain point, you got to understand the power of Lucifer or Lucid, or even the power of Satan, as defined here: a match of wood tip with the combustible substance ignited by friction. So where we speak about real illumination and we speak about real consciousness and real awakening, it is literally ignited by friction, meaning that even if you had the most beautiful, wonderful life, you would have never been illuminated, because that within itself is not even awakening you to shit. You can't really understand anything. So the goal is to open yourself up, to be more clear, to understand this life, to understand this world, and not to be so drawn in by your emotions for things that you'll never, ever, ever get. Venus Explained, ladies and gentlemen. I hope that shit was interesting and it made sense. I'll stay on the live for a couple of minutes to see if anybody has questions, if that made sense. But give me a thumbs up if it made sense. Give me a thumbs down if you confused, or drop a question on me while I'm online. See the baby stop crying, so I think we got a little bit more time. Thank you. Too deep? I hope it wasn't too deep, and I hope it wasn't too boring. I would hope that people would check out the article, which is listed in the description. Also check out altercreations.net, which is my wife's website, hoodmystic.com, which this article will be on. And from there, I would hope that, you know, we would strive to look at things from a more holistic point of view. I think the problem with consciousness is that you think that this is an avenue or a pathway to your fantasies, and the reality is that it absolutely isn't. There is nothing that in anywhere that states, or no program or no school or nothing that says everything has to be perfect. Hathor is the more docile version of what Sekhmet used to be. Where Sekhmet used to be a comet, Hathor is more of a planet. And it's not to say that she's going to play around, but she's more of a protective force. We all have, well, I couldn't say we all, but there's a select few of us that walk around with Hathor over our left or right shoulder. And if you look close enough, or if you catch it in a glimpse of your, like if you catch it, you'll feel it or you'll see it. Now that I said it, you'll notice it more. And you got to understand, man, we live in this world, in a world where anything that can happen to you, you have to be protected of some sort. And so if you have a divine right and you have a divine path, then you are protected to pursue that divine path. Why would you have a divine right or a divine path and be afraid? It's like all of the great people in the world that ever did anything great, you would be like, well, that person obviously was afraid and he let his fear take over and he never accomplished nothing. No. People be living in this world with death threats constantly, hate constantly, and they don't let that shit slow them up. Part of that is Venus, and knowing that once you start to do this work, once you start to really look at things from a holistic balance and in a space of wholeness, then the people that's not, then you have to really make the decision to really cut their ass off and move on, or continuously leverage your energy with the falsehood that everything is going to be perfect one day. People wake up, go to sleep with the hopes of a future that's never ever going to come. Not because it's not going to come, because they never worked on it, because they simply just was hoping for that shit. The pentagram. The pentagram is a dope sigil and a dope tattoo. When opening and closing rituals, I cast the pentagram in the sky in 4 directions to open it, and then recast it to close it. Also the pentagram, what is the other one? The Manas hieroglyph. You spell hieroglyph, but Manas is MONAD. Monad hieroglyph is a good sigil that taps into this energy. But the Star of David, the as above, so the triangle up and then the triangle below, as above, so below. That's what Venus represent, Sekhmet represent, exemplifies the as above, so below principle. Yeah, they say that Sekhmet is the protector of Ma'at. Sekhmet is the protector of balance. So if you have purpose, you also have protection. No need to do any protection rituals. No need to do any offerings. Your offerings and your rituals is when you live out and execute your path daily. We have to exercise that fear and move outside of that fear and learn how to connect. And the way that we learn how to connect is by observing the stars. And so that's where I'm at, and that's what I'll continue to speak on and continue to be guided to speak on. So with that being said, I really want to thank everybody for joining me. Feel free to comment. Feel free to share this video. Feel free to check the other Planetary Explain videos where I do the same thing. And stay tuned for the Mercury Explain video. And I don't know, other things that's going on. We had the shadow group yesterday. That was dope. So if any inquiries and anything that we're doing as far as a collective, whether it's Patreon, whether it's Slack, whether it's the shadow group, we want to start a money group. So if there's any money experts that want to take the lead role in establishing a Google Hangout in regarding to money and finances and creating multiple streams of income, would love to speak to you about starting a Google Hangout. And so peace, precious. Peace to everybody joining the live, and I hope everybody has a good day. But with that being said, I'm signing out. Peace.